the nuns told me I had an authority problem. And I found a profession that paid me to have an authority problem.
Hey everyone, I'm Denisa Tova, host of Beyond the Bar podcast. And today's guest is someone who didn't come from comfort. No, she did not, and did not wait around for permission. Dawn Cardi is a longtime attorney, trial lawyer, and founding partner of Cardi and Edgar. She has spent, decades in matrimonial law, family law, criminal defense. But what makes her story so compelling is not just the length of her career, it's the force behind it. And I'm so tempted to just sort of lead into her story, but you must share that yourself. So welcome to the show, Dawn.
Thank you. And I really appreciate being invited. My story does start with a mother who was 15 when I was born and had only done a year of high school herself, and a dad who was 18. And I am the oldest of 4 sisters. And she was quite a remarkable woman. She really was someone really intent on her daughters getting an education, and actually her daughters never to be beholden to anyone else to support themselves, which she thought was a very important value. And so I graduated from high school, and I was the first one in my family to graduate from high school. And then, of course, college, and I taught high school English. I was a Vista volunteer and was assigned to Legal Services Project, and that's how I decided to go to law school. So I went to law school, and I only wanted to do criminal law in the beginning, and I applied for the job at the Legal Aid Society, criminal defense, and that was the beginning of my legal career. I was a supervisor. I prosecuted security fraud at the AG's office. I worked in a law firm. I did corporate work. And then I started my own practice when I had my 3rd child at 40 and hung up my shingle. And I said, well, what do I like to do? I like to do family law, and I like to do criminal defense. And I call it people law, because you're really helping people when they need it the most. And I've never looked back.
I am just I am stunned. There's so much packed in there, and I'm going back to the beginning when you said that your mom became mom very young, and I believe her mom as well. So
we have 5 generations. When my daughter Vanessa was born, I was 31. They had all been 15 when they had their first child. And so we actually have a picture of 5 generations at the same time.
Oh, that must be so powerful. But you know what? There was another thing that you said. Yet, despite becoming a mother so young, your mom, she instilled this belief in yourself that to never be essentially dependent on anyone, always stand on your own. And I'm extrapolating a little bit because that sort of came from my mother as well. Where do you know the story? Where did that come from? What was her upbringing like?
My grandmother was born of immigrants from Poland and the Ukraine. She was a cleaning woman. My great-grandmother was a cleaning woman. She came from the Ukraine. When I was a little girl, I used to go with them to clean the offices off the Gowanus Expressway in Brooklyn. Those were all manufacturing facilities, and they would take me sometimes because they'd go after the offices closed to clean. I think that she came from a long line of women who had, tough lives. I mean, they really were very resilient. But the importance of the work ethic and supporting yourself was always important to my mother, my grandmother, my great grandmother. You know, they didn't always have somebody in their lives to share financial responsibility with, and that's where I think my mother got it, and that's where she wanted to pass it on. I mean, my mother is really the story because she ultimately went back to school and she graduated from Queens College with honors, 2 master's degrees, and taught in the Great Neck school system, a reading specialist. This is when my youngest sister was in first grade. She started her journey. So that's how I came to be. I really owe it to her and my father for also providing support.
Wow, I have goosebumps. My mom and grandmother had a similar story, not in that my grandmother, I was born in former Czechoslovakia, and so my grandmother was one of 18 and was started working when she was 5, and my mother, became a single, parent, and when I was 4, worked 3 jobs, and one of them was cleaning offices as well, and then had a it was interesting, had a governmental position, but was not part of the the Communist Party. It was actually her commentary every time she would come home, how, ridiculous that was, but always instilled the same. Is that, I would hear her say, "Man is not your financial plan," essentially, and you always need to stand on your own. That's it. Get an education. So when you said that, it really resonated. Wow. So so becoming a lawyer, was becoming a lawyer always part of the plan, or did life sort of push you toward that?
I think in retrospect, I was probably by personality and temperament um, drawn to the law. But when I graduated from college, I taught high school English. So it wasn't, I didn't really think about it. In fact, I was going to graduate school for English at Columbia and decided to join VISTA, which was Volunteers in Service to America. It's the precursor of AmeriCorps now. So it was kind of like the national brands of the Peace Corps. You volunteered and you were placed and you were paid a stipend. And I was fortunately placed in the Legal Services Project. And I thought this was the way to go, that I could help people, really help people that way. And that's how I wound up going to law school. But I did tell my children that the nuns told me I had an authority problem. And I found a profession that paid me to have an authority problem.
Oh my gosh, that does actually. And I may be wrong, but you strike me as someone who has zero patience for just stupidity and, let me ask you this. I actually do like to ask this question. What is one of your pet peeves about people?
Um, a lack of kindness and generosity. I think that's one of my pet peeves because I think it's really important. Those are two important values: kindness and generosity. We most of us, many of us, have such incredibly fortunate lives, and we should be able to share some of it with others, both in your time that you give, as well as in your financial support.
Earlier, just for briefly, for a few seconds or so, we spoke about how this world has gotten faster, and there's this demand and expectation to respond quickly, and whether it's getting a text from a friend or from a client. I'm wondering, what are you seeing dealing with your colleagues, and other practitioners, um, in as far as a change? It seems like the world has sort of changed, and I think probably since COVID, and then we have, of course, the evolution of, technology, AI. I mean, that's happening so rapidly. What are you noticing?
So with the technology came the immediacy of people expecting, for example, a response in more immediate terms, like I've sent you a text or I've sent you an email and you haven't responded. Um, I don't think we, I think the difficulty I hear practitioners like myself saying is, sometimes we actually need time to think, and thinking deserves attention. And to get attention, you have to be able to concentrate a bit and take some time and think about your answers and think about how you want to respond. And so sometimes responding, not being able to respond so quickly, sometimes our clients are concerned about it. So we are trying to balance now in the profession the need for our clients to have a response in a timely fashion with being able to give them a response in a timely fashion.
Do you have a hard time saying no?
I'm one person who has a very hard time saying no. I look in the mirror, I practice it. I tell my friends to practice it for themselves, but I do have a hard time saying no. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because people come to you, Denisa. I'm sure you experience this in your profession. They come to you with needs, and you really want to help them. You know, you really want to be able to, especially, in cases like divorce, where it's tough. It's tough times, and people are needy, and they need your advice. They need your intellect. They need your answers, so it's hard for me to say no.
You mentioned that you still love your profession. How do you keep the fire going inside you after, such a long time?
So I still love what I do. People will say, well, are you going to retire? And I say, I'm sure at some point I will retire. But right now, as long as I love what I do, I still enjoy the practice. I still enjoy working with people. I like to get up and come to the office. I like to, you know, uh, learn about the law. Um, I love to represent children. I represent many children in contested divorce cases. I love doing the parent coordination work now, which I've started to do in the last few years.
Oh.
Uh, and I feel, and the criminal work also. I do federal criminal defense primarily. Um, as long as I still like it and I have the energy for it, I'm going to be doing it.
Can you think about, without revealing, of course, any identifying facts, but can you think about a case or two that really impacted you profoundly? Um,
Mm, yeah, yeah. I would say there was a divorce case a number of years ago where I had to represent someone I was assigned by the court to represent someone who ultimately was responsible for murdering their wife. And I had to resolve that case in a way that was best for the children in that circumstance. And I was able to convince my client to do the right thing and, do the right thing as far as custody for those two children. And that really meant a lot to me to be able to do that for them who had been through so much. So that was a divorce case. And in my criminal cases, getting someone exonerated who was innocent,
wow.
who was sentenced to 20 years for what was an armed robbery, and who had been convicted. I was an lawyer at trial who had been convicted at trial and who had brought post-trial motions. I went to Second Circuit, the federal Second Circuit, and I won. And he came home, and he had served by that time about 8 years. And that to me was a proud moment.
That's
But
incredible. Good.
everybody has their story. Everybody's backstory is meaningful to them.
Definitely. I have so much respect for what you do. Um, it's not just dividing assets, and you're really impacting lives and the rest of people's lives. And you have to play so many roles, and then there's your personal story, and that's often unheard. And so it's really, I think it's so important to get it out there. And it's just it's the enormity of what you and the practitioners just carry is incredible. What So when you're not, I mean, I used to ask, like, who are you outside of your profession? But I think it seems like it's part of you. It's a big part of you. But if you're stepping outside, and let's say when you're not working, what do you enjoy doing? What
I'm
fills
a travel bug. Travel. Ever since I was a little girl, I've always loved the idea of like travel. And my husband and I, pretty actually, once the children were out of college and those expenses go away, we started to do serious travel. And I've been to Japan, I've been to Africa twice, I've been to India, Nepal, Thailand. I just love to travel. I love to meet new people. I love to see the differences and the similarities of people, you know, the similarities of people just wanting to have a good life, wanting to provide for their families, wanting to do the best they can for themselves and their children. That's universal everywhere. But people do it in different ways. And that's the interesting part. So travel is big for me. I love the beach. I love walking on the beach, and I love reading. I belong to a book club of really terrific women, and we meet once a month, and I get to read fiction. So,
what are you reading now?
actually, I'm reading an author called Ocean Buong, Buong. He's a young man who came from Vietnam as a little boy, and he is an amazing writer. And he wrote Emperor of Gladness, and that's his second novel. And I just finished reading that and really, really enjoyed it.
What
Um, he's an interesting young man, fascinating that his birth language was Vietnamese, and yet he is a Pulitzer Prize winner type author. He just writes so beautifully about his life here. So
So you really gain appreciation for, and I love that when you started traveling outside of this country, and gaining appreciation for other cultures, and how they sort of view the world. What have you learned about yourself through travels?
I've learned that I love people. I love their stories. I love meeting them. They, when people share their stories with you, they share a piece of themselves. And I really, really enjoy that, learning about that piece of themselves and myself. I've learned about philosophies of life, how do I look at the world? What matters to me? Um, you know, I've learned about resilience,
Mhm.
how important resilience is for all of us, for myself, for my family. So those are some of the things you learn when you travel, as well as you learn to eat interesting food. You learn to see interesting art and culture and dance and music. So that's travel.
I think it's I love it. I think it's so important to experience it. I think it's important for our children to experience it and just sort of broaden your horizons. And I think having a gratitude. Um and I was going to ask you about food. How do you do with as you travel to various countries? Are you open? Would you say that you're a pretty diverse eater? Are you open to trying new things, or do you have sort of your staples? This
Uh,
is.
Now I'm a diverse eater.
Are you?
I love to, and we often take cooking courses when we travel locally. We'll sign up for cooking courses to learn about cooking um, different different ethnic dishes. And I also like to eat street food, but I've learned kind of the hard way that you should go on a food tour and not necessarily do it on your own in certain places, But there's now so many, every place you go, there's a food tour. So you get to eat local food, but you're sure that it's not going to make you sick.
Safe. Wow.
And it's food is so important in cultures, really. I mean, it's the fabric by which people get together for all of their holidays, right?
Yeah.
It's often centered around food and special foods and meaningful foods. So that's that's an important part of travel.
How would your husband describe you?
Firecracker. Energizer bunny. Um, you know, um, very willing to try new things.
Mm,
I like to enjoy. I enjoy life.
I can tell. Yeah. When we were emailing initially trying to find a date, you did mention about traveling and right there and then, it was very clear. You're not just talking about going to Caribbean,
Oh,
that's nice, that's fun, but that's to me not traveling.
well, that's great when you need your rest. You rest
Yes.
in the winter. You go to the Caribbean or you go to a warm climate because you can,
Yeah.
and you relax and enjoy. And that's one kind of travel, and that's fun. And then there's the other kind of travel where you're out and about every day, learning something new, seeing new things. I mean, it's just. I mean, I was in Delhi, which has 32 million people. There are no there are no traffic signs or whatever, and the streets are filled with, there's filled with tuk-tuks, they're filled with taxis and cars and trucks and buses and cows. You gotta love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, my earliest is we lived in China. I was 8 years old, and my mom was sent to work at the embassy for 4 years. So, I mean, obviously, when you're at the embassy, it's a comfortable community, but, immediately, we were immersed in a new language. I mean, from speaking Czech to we didn't go to Chinese school. We actually had to go to Russian school because we didn't have a Czech school at our embassy. So I had to learn within weeks Russian, which is different than Czech, and then little just little Chinese, and it was and there in Russian school. I mean, I had classmates from Poland and Hungary and Romania and all these other countries. So, but then on the weekends we would get out of the embassy and we would take a trip. Um, it was like a mini bus tour to, like the Forbidden City, just basically outside, traveled outside street markets or just take a bus, public transportation. And it was different. Bicycles everywhere. I mean, we're talking about, oh my gosh, date myself. This would be 40 years ago. So, but it's different. And it's, to me, that was not scary. And I love the way you're describing it. It's you step in there and you get immersed in it and appreciate it and then come back enriched. Um, that's wonderful.
Yeah. And it adds to your professional life because it just gives you more of an understanding of people and cultures. And we have such a multicultural city and clientele that it's important to kind of learn about different cultures so you can help them during the times when they need it.
Your life, when you when you look at your life, where you started and what you build, and the women coming behind you, like what do you most hope they understand about what is possible?
I hope that women know that whatever their experience is in balancing work-life balance, because that's a big issue for women who go into the workforce, no matter what level you're in the workforce, that there is no perfection and
Mm,
that you shouldn't set the bar at perfection.
yeah.
You know, you have to set a reasonable bar for yourself. You shouldn't be comparing yourself to what you see other people doing. You have to be kind to yourself in order to balance all of the responsibilities that you have. So I hope they know that. I hope they understand that they are vulnerable if they don't work outside the home. It's just a factor I talk about, I speak about. You have to understand you may love staying home with your children, and that's certainly an option. But know that if you stayed out of your profession for too long a period of time, it's going to be very hard for you to come back in. So I always say consider part time work. Consider
Mhm.
just, or going back a little bit at a time, or doing a job share, but keeping your finger in the pie.
Wow. This was this was such a meaningful conversation and it's such a great message. Just tell me your parting thoughts, whether it's advice to incoming attorneys or something that you'd like to share, um, whatever it is.
Um, I know many attorneys say they don't love what they do, but I say give it a chance. And then when you pick, if you want to be an attorney and you pick an area of the law, pick areas of the law that you think you'll enjoy,
Mm,
not necessarily where you'll earn the most money, but what you think you'll enjoy and have and and look at it in a positive way. If you love your job 75% of the time, you are blessed in our society. And
yeah.
so that's what I would tell the new lawyers coming up. Give it a chance and pick something you really enjoy doing.
That's a great advice. And the only way to do that is if you try it out, you meet, you get out there and you meet mentors, and
Exactly.
yeah, just test it out, experience it. I mean, it's not going to happen, from behind a screen in your bedroom. Right? You just got to get out there.
Exactly. You have to get out there and you meet people and you network and you meet people through the bar associations or through internships. So many people will mentor you, but you've got to let them know you need a mentor. You've got to reach out. But
Yes,
people are very generous in our profession with their time. I have to say that. You know, lawyers are very generous about pro bono work and they're very generous about their time mentoring others. Um, but I I love it. I welcome you. Come, take it over. Do it.
Okay, there's an invitation to our viewers and listeners. Well, Dawn, again, so meaningful and wonderful. And what stays with me, it's not just the incredible length of your career, and that's extraordinary. It's and your story and rising above. So, I mean, you could tell. Um, I guess challenging upbringing, but it sounds like you had such a wonderful, and your mom was such an anchor and such a force that instilled some, what has become your sort of your drive and I mean it's been incredible to listen to it and so inspirational. So and it's the way that you build your life through like your determination, but also using it to keep showing up for other people. So
Right.
that's
Thank
that's
you.
incredible. Yeah.
Thank I have gratitude for having had this life. I really do. It's a good life.
Well, thank you again, and to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on Beyond the Bar podcast. And to know how to get hold of Don Cardi, make sure that you click on a bio link below, follow us on social media. And until next time, stay curious and inspired.